Hey, fellow psychos, and welcome back to another episode of We Know You Know, a podcast about psych. I am one of your hosts, Barb,
And I'm Matthew.
and today we're going to talk about season 2, episode 13 of Psych.
Don't forget, if you are enjoying the show, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends.
Yes, definitely. So, we want to give a shout out to our official Psych Fanatics of Facebook group. We love that group so much. Also, our Psych subreddit. So many of our listeners are from these groups, and we're so glad you're here.
Yep. Thank you guys for checking us out if you're new. This is the part of the podcast where we get into a little bit of news, anything that's new, psych related. The official psych podcast, it's called The Psychologists Are In, and it has Maggie Lawson and Timothy Omenson as the hosts, and it came out today. As of
Yeah.
recording on November 11th. That's when we're recording this episode. And it's very exciting. Me and
Yeah,
Barb
we've
both got
both
the
been looking forward to it.
yeah. Me and Barb have both got to listen to it, and I think it was great. I really enjoyed it. I think Maggie sounds perfect as like the host.
I mean, she's no Barb, but
But I think Tim was great too. As a psych fan, I am very excited for all the insider information that we're going to get, especially based off of what we got from the first episode. The
yeah.
first episode, they had Steve Franks on, and they were kind of talking to him. Tim wasn't on it until like kind of the last like 20 minutes, but they had Steve Franks on, and we got a few pieces of information. And if this is anything, if the rest of the episodes are anything like what we got this time, I'm really looking forward to getting some of those details on the origins of things. In the first episode of their show, they talked about how they picked the blueberry to be an echo, and they talked about Tim and Maggie's their test screenings, and then their their first days on episode 1.
We talked about all of their testing, which
Well, I
was
guess
which was
Maggie's on
cool.
episode
Yeah.
2, but yeah.
Yeah, well, they even talked about James Roday. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm hoping that with their level of access and personal on-hand experience, we're gonna get all the questions that I find myself asking, and that like we talk about while we record the episodes. Hopefully, we're gonna get those answered as they like follow up and go through them. It does kind of sound like they have a different format than us, so I do think that's cool. It sounds like they're not like going through in detail in each episode. They're more of like talking about certain points of it. So I think that'll be cool too.
I think it'll be a nice sort of accompanying thing so that, you can listen to us and get all the details about the episode and kind of go through from a fan perspective.
Hmm.
And then when you're listening to them, you're going to get the behind the scenes stuff that we're not able to give you. And they should work together nicely.
Yeah, it should also be mentioned that our podcast comes out on Tuesday and their podcast comes out on Thursday.
There are quite a few episodes behind us at this point, but that's okay. As a fan, I'm going to agree with you, Matt. I was excited about this because
Mhm.
if you'll agree with me on this. This is one of the reasons we started doing this podcast because we couldn't find one about
Yeah,
psych.
exactly. Like there was none that went long and that kept going. There's a couple out
Mhm.
there, but they kind of died down. And there's with the show being so old, there's not tons of like behind the screen footage like there is now on shows and movies where
Right.
they take all sorts of Instagram stuff and Twitter stuff, and you get to see all this information. We don't have that.
Yeah, there wasn't any social
We
media
can't
then.
even find scripts
Right.
like from the show. So
Although I did find it interesting what Steve Franks was talking about with the scripts today and how he wrote them.
mhm,
And I'll give
yeah,
the listeners a little tidbit that he wrote them to be entertaining to the people reading them. So he was trying to entertain the actors in the scripts. So like all the language that he would use about what they needed to be doing. And this is one of the questions that you and I have had before. Is
yeah.
like, I wonder if that was written in for James Roday to act like that or to do that. And it turns out it was. And so I think that's really kind of interesting. And I'm glad to have that question answered. So I would
Yep.
encourage everyone to check it out. Maybe you'll get some behind the scenes answers that you've been looking for too.
Yeah. Shameless plug to our interview with Sage Broncobank. We actually asked him about his experience with it and how specifically with the way that Sean's character does all of his crazy movements and what was
Mhm.
described in the script, or if he like improv'd it. And I think this really shines a light on what we could imagine it says now that he kind of gave us some information on that. So I can definitely see it now.
I believe that, he said too that the network kinda wanted a lot of big reactions from Sean,
Like Jim Carrey
and
style, yeah.
yeah, and, James Roday was like, "Yeah, but where am I gonna go next?" So, like, he knew to, like, rein it in a little bit sometimes so he could get bigger other times. It
Yeah.
was good. This character was just made for him.
And we know it takes a few episodes of a podcast to kind of establish yourself and get into a groove of
Right.
what your essence is as the podcast. We get it. We know. It takes a couple episodes, but maybe once they find that, if we like tweet at them some or message them some,
If our
maybe
fans
there's a
message
collab
them.
between the psychologist and the We Know You Know podcast.
Yes.
That'd be so cool. Oh, I'd
Right. So
love to
so
do a
feel
collab
free.
with
Oh, I
Maggie
would too.
Lawson and Timothy Omenson, and if we can get Corbin in there,
Yeah.
it would be so cool. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, any messaging that you guys wanna do to them to encourage that, we would not be opposed to.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
for
definitely
it.
not. I know I'm definitely gonna
Tweet
message
them.
them anytime I can, so,
Yeah, me
mm,
too. Me too. Tweet them, guys, tweet
might
them.
have already shamelessly plugged from the Twitter call.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe I did too, I don't
oh,
know.
did you do Should I
You
go
guys
on there under my Twitter and message them and be like, "Hey, there's this podcast, you guys should collab with them," and then just
Yeah.
yeah. Under my own Twitter?
That
Okay.
would be great.
Um,
Well, we
but
know
yeah,
that the Psychos are diehard fans, and I think the 2 will go well together.
also us talking about the podcast, Michael Holst, one of our YouTube commenters, he asked us about that in one of our recent ones, asking us what we thought about the new podcast, if we were gonna listen
Mhm.
to it, or what our feelings are about it. So thanks, Michael, for sending in a question.
Michael?
Um, we have 2 more emails
Okay,
to go over today. The first one we have is from Tony Ambrose. And
okay.
it says, "Hey team, love the show. A few thoughts about this episode." And he's referring to There's Something About Mira. Mira's dad is played by Oba Babatunde, who
Mhm.
also plays Lamar the doorman in the 90s classic That Thing You Do. Despite
Oh,
Barb's dislike of her, Kerry Washington, the Psych guest star who went on to be the biggest star after being on Psych, I mean, she ended up the star of a Shonda Rhimes show, which is pretty
scandal.
huge, right? Did any other
Mhm.
guest stars go bigger than that after being on the show?
Ooh,
That's an interesting question. Although,
that's
yes,
a good
yes,
question.
100%, yeah. Although I don't really know what she just referenced, the Shonda Rhimes show. I don't really know
That was
that.
called Scandal. It was
But
about a
there,
president and yeah, it was the whole thing.
okay, but there are lots of, I
Yeah.
think there's lots of people, especially with the show being older now, like that are doing stuff. We need to keep an eye. We'll keep an eye out for that. I think going forward,
I'm
if
gonna
we
have
point out like
some
any big stars.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some good answers for you guys on this next week. When we
Hmm.
record next week, I will make sure,
To point
Tony
it out if something
Tony,
like that
right?
is
It's
big.
it's
Yeah,
Tony,
Tony.
right?
Hmm.
Okay, so Tony, I'm gonna do some research here. And and please don't you guys don't get me wrong. It's not really that I don't like her. I just something about them makes them sort of difficult to watch that you just don't click.
It doesn't click with you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, she did have a huge show, in Scandal, but I'm gonna do some research,
Hmm.
and we're gonna find out.
His email's not done yet.
Good
He also
question, though.
says the hotel room where they find Jan's body. I'm sorry, Jan's.
Yawn.
Let's call it what it is. The hotel room where they find Jan's. I can't say it. It throws me off every
Okay,
time.
Sean.
The hotel room where they find Jan's body is definitely the same one where the wedding party is getting ready in season 1, episode 3, Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace. I thought it looked familiar, but I forgot which episode that was. Nice, nice
Good
find.
catch. Yeah,
That's
good
good.
catch.
He also listed his best quotes. "That's my sanctuary," which was when Gus was leaving the bathroom and being
Yep.
followed. "I was supposed to be that goat," which was Sean talking about the wedding photo.
Mhm.
And "Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear it," which was when Gus
When
was reassuring him that he would be his
Yes.
best man.
I
Those are
love
all good.
that. Tony, I love that you gave us your best quotes. This is awesome. This is what we're talking about. This is great. What else did he say?
And he just finished it up with saying, "Thanks for the show. I'm super excited about this run to end season 2 here. Such a strong run." Yeah. So, yeah,
Yes.
couldn't agree with you more. We knew this from the start that season 2 was going to be a banger with only a couple
Mhm.
low tier episodes. So, yep, thanks for following us along too and emailing in.
And I think that Tony has participated and commented on in our Facebook group as well about episodes.
I
So,
think so, yeah.
yeah, I know that I feel like I've communicated with
He looks
him
familiar. Mhm.
online. So that's kind of awesome. Tony, thank you.
And we have one more. This one's from Cassie.
Okay.
And it says, here we go. Hi, guys. I never write into podcasts, but I am loving y'all's rewatch of Psych. On the episode where Gus's dad may have killed an old guy, I had my own revelation about Gus and his parents. Oh, I love it. Fan theories.
Ooh, love
I
this.
love that Gus's parents constantly worry about him and try to give him money and take care of him because I feel like that's the way Gus takes care of Sean. The same way the
Oh.
super sniffer is generational in their family, so is that desire to take care of the people you love. Keep up the good work with the podcast.
Mm.
My middle schooler and I love watching Psych together, and we love hearing what you guys talk about on each episode.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that mail.
I like that theory. I think that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Hmm.
Gus is nurturing. He's
Yeah.
nurturing.
I didn't think about that. I
Yeah.
like that.
I love that,
Even
Cassie.
if that wasn't the design, I like that theory. Like I like that as canon.
And Cassie, anytime you want to email us again, if you send your middle schooler's name in, we can do a shout out over the show. And but we're so glad you like listening to it together and watching the show. Love
Yep.
that. Thank you for writing in.
All
Sweet.
right, and now let's get into the episode. This week we're talking about Lights, Camera, Homicidio, and this one was first aired January 25th, 2008. Barb, let's get
When the
into it.
name
Who's the
is
writer and
funny,
directors?
when the name is funny, you know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So the writers this week were Steve Franks and our friend Andy Berman. We know who they are. The director of this episode is Matt Shackman. We have seen him before. He first directed 9 Lives from season 1, and we're very happy about this. He is also directing several other episodes. He did 4 altogether. And some of the upcoming ones were ones we really liked. Dual Spires, which is a favorite of Matthew's,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved 100 Clues.
That
So
was awesome.
we're excited to see, when we get to those episodes too. They're good ones.
All right, and this week's synopsis.
Lassie has called Sean and Gus to help solve a murder case that took place on a Spanish soap opera during filming. Lassie thinks it's an open and shut case, but Sean does not agree, and Gus, being a fan, wants to work a case there. The investigation gets interesting as Sean unintentionally works his way into the cast. They solve the case, and poor Juliet learns a harsh lesson about friendship on the job along the way. Start this episode in a flashback of Sean walking in on Henry watching a Spanish soap opera. He tells Sean that he was taking a nap, and Sean's like, "Do you sleep with your eyes wide open?" Henry, in true Henry fashion, turns that little moment into a learning experience with Sean and kind of teaches Sean that acting is just lying. He even says, "Do you think those goofballs on chips are real cops?" And Sean goes, "Wow. Anything else you want to ruin for me?" I thought that was so funny. I do have a quick side note here since we're talking about soap opera and Henry watching it. I'm not sure if anybody was aware, but Corbin Burnson's mom, her name was Jeannie Cooper. She was actually Catherine Chancellor on The Young and the Restless, a soap opera from 1976 to 2013. She just died, I believe, last year. Isn't that
Oh
crazy?
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So the soap opera world was not new to
Hmm.
Corbin. Sean's pretty happy because Lassie has called them to help out on a case. Did you notice in this scene Gus talking about his breakfast?
Yes, I did. I thought it's just a quirk. Just I like it.
I
When
was
he gets
just
a little over
curious
descriptive, I like it.
because he's like, "I was having a poached egg on an English muffin with
With
hollandaise sauce."
hollandaise. Hmm. Yeah, I liked it.
Why didn't he just call it Eggs Benedict? That's Eggs Benedict. Why didn't you just say I was having Eggs Benedict?
Mhm.
I don't know. He was being very descriptive. Anyway. They reach the crime scene, and to Sean's surprise, Gus recognizes the room that they're in. It is Corinne's living room from Explosión Gigantesca de Romance, which is the giant explosion of romance in English, and that is the Spanish soap.
It's awful. That's what it really is. But continue. Yeah. Yeah. So they've been apparently called on by Lassiter, which immediately sounds off. Um, and when they get there, Gus, like as they approach the set where the body is and where Lassiter and Jules is, Gus recognizes the set, and it's because he watches the show, but
Mhm.
will not admit that he watches the show, with the exception of saying that he sees it in the doctor's offices that he goes to, and he also mentions that it's a super popular right now. They're the craze, the telenovelas,
The
telenovelas,
telenovelas.
telenovelas.
The
Wow.
telenovelas.
Hmm.
I like how he says, "I got sucked in." I couldn't help but get sucked in. It was
Hmm.
funny.
And he knows, for someone who doesn't like the show, he has retained a lot of details about the
Mhm.
characters and the setting.
Yeah, he knows the storyline and everything. We do find out that the murder victim is Rinaldo Nunez, who is an actor from the soap, and he was killed in a stabbing on the show.
Yes, yeah, they actually have
Mhm.
footage of him doing the stabbing. Gus is like, whatever this case is, I want in on it, and I don't care how you do it, which is rare words from Gus, who we know is a fan of the show, and he really just needs to admit it.
Yeah, but that's when you know how much of a fan. Like, he was
Yeah,
like,
I
"I
don't
don't
care
care
how
what
you
you
do
have
it.
to do.
Hmm.
Just
But
do it."
as soon as Lassiter notices them approaching the set, he tells them to go home and that Juliet jumped the gun. But Sean then teases Juliet as at like he's like, you don't have to, tell me about a fake
Mm.
case. You can just call me and say, hey, you want to talk.
Yeah,
A
anytime you
little
wanna spend
flirty
time
moment
with
there.
me.
Hmm.
Are you surprised that I didn't call that out?
I almost put. Now tell us about the Floridian scene, Barb. And
But
I'm glad I
you
didn't.
know
I'm
what
glad I
happens
didn't.
to me in this episode, though? I get so sucked into it
Uh huh.
that there's too much else happening that I'll be honest with you, the Schul's moments are not as there's just too
Not
much
as
other good
entertaining.
stuff. There's
Mhm.
too much other good stuff
Yeah.
happening. I can't.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it
Um,
turns out that the other
mhm,
suspect,
mhm.
George, was recorded on
Wait, wait,
film
wait.
stabbing the
Did you just
victim.
call him George?
It's his name.
It's Jorge.
Um, mm,
Jorge.
Agree to disagree.
Mateo.
Um,
Mateo, it's Jorge.
George was recorded on film stabbing the victim as a part of the show, and he claims he had no idea that the prop knife was switched. I a little off topic here. I thought it was a little coincidental that this episode came along during this whole Alec Baldwin incident.
Yes.
I'm not going to get too much into that, but it is mind blowing to me that anybody would
Mhm.
not check anytime they're handed a weapon and they're like, you're gonna stab or hit somebody or shoot somebody with this thing. It blows my mind that nobody would not just take the personal responsibility to check and be like, oh, is this knife sharp? Does this blade
Right.
collapse into the handle, or is this solid? Like, it's such a simple thing, and so quickly you could do it. Like, just take the magazine out. Look, oh, okay. But yeah, it blows my mind that this is even a thing, like that people even have to question. I find that to be really interesting that this episode came along. Although, again, this is not going to air for another 2 weeks, so or another week,
But
so
people are not living under rocks, so
that's
they'll
true.
know
Yeah.
exactly what we're referring to, and
Mhm.
even though we're recording it earlier on, you're right, and I did draw some parallels when I was watching the episode today, so I it's interesting that you brought that up because it was in my mind, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But while after Lassiter tells him to go away, about 3 minutes 30 seconds in, Sean gets his first clue sighting that he gets, and Lassiter's handling the murder weapon, the knife, in the bag, and in the evidence bag, Sean notices a long hair, a long brown hair in there.
Mhm.
So he kind of just retains that knowledge for later. Right after they get shooed away, Gus tells Sean quickly to point out something or ask a question that gets them on the case, and Sean just he doesn't catch anything, and he's too busy like talking to the sandwich or the it's not the sandwich girl, the what are they
The craft
called?
services girl?
Craft services girl. Yes, he's
Yeah.
talking to the craft services girl. He's all interested in the food, asking if the sandwiches are for everybody. So he just doesn't seem to be too interested in this case yet. He's kind of like Lasseter. He thinks
Yeah.
it's kind of open and shut.
Until they see the footage and they're really looking at the footage of the stabbing, because
Mhm.
that's when they can see that the actor
George,
Jorge really looked surprised after the stabbing. He didn't look like he was I don't know, he just didn't look like he was real
yeah,
like it was
he didn't look like
intentional.
ready for it or anything. Yeah,
Right. He looked like, "Oh my god, what just happened here?"
like that felt real. What just happened?
Yeah.
There's
And
prop knives
then
or something.
oh, and then at 4 minutes 55 seconds, we get the Spanish theme song.
This is the second altered theme song, correct? The first one
Yes,
was the Christmas
the
one.
first one was Christmas,
Mhm.
and now we
Yep.
get the Spanish one, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm so here for that. I'm so here for that. I love it. And it was still done by Steve Franks and the Friendly Indians, and it was just it's
Oh,
perfect.
I didn't know it was still them. Okay.
Yeah, it was still them. Really good. And at the very end of it, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but at the very end of the theme song, somebody goes, Arriba.
I did not notice that. No, I didn't
It
notice
made me
that.
so happy today. I loved
This
it.
episode made me happy for lots of reasons. I did
Oh,
not notice
yes.
that one though.
Yeah, that's a good one, though. A good Arriba. It was great. After the theme song, we're at this station. Sean is trying very hard to convince the chief there is more to the stabbing. And Gus is mad that the actor has been pulled from the show. They find out that the actor, Jorge, has not been arrested or anything, but he has been suspended from the show. And Gus is like, no, I need to know whose baby it is.
I
And
gotta go if
um,
that baby is his,
it
Sean.
was
He kind of whispers it over. It's like I gotta know.
it was great. And then Sean reveals that he knows about the hair, and the I don't know, the chief ends up giving them 1 day. They get 1 day to prove that there's something more going on.
So during I'm sorry, during this scene, Gus is talking kind of a bit, or actually to a point he's stammering, trying to convince them that they need to be put on the case while also
Mhm.
not trying to look like a fan of the show, at least not blatantly. And I thought one
It's
thing was
not
really
working.
funny about this was not necessarily Gus, but Sean. It's Sean is standing next to Gus and he's just reacting to what Gus is saying. And there's a lot of like facial changes here.
Mhm.
And strangely enough, it's he covers for him. Whenever like Gus starts to sound like he's a little too much of a fan of a show, and then he corrects, then Sean is like, and he points to him, and he like changed. I don't know. I thought it was a really funny way that again, I love it when they do this when they cover for each other, or when they like play off each other's joke or their plan. So I thought it was really funny, and it made me actually laugh a little bit seeing his face change as Gus kind of went back
Yeah.
and forth with his story. So I like that part. Next, 6 minutes, 30 seconds in, Sean uses this opportunity to reveal the hair on the knife, as you mentioned. And Lassie kind of ignored it because he thought the evidence on the actual video of the stabbing was enough, but the chief is not convinced, and she puts them on the case and gives them the day, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
I do also have to note that we get a new guest star here that I'm a fan of and I love. They're back on the set, Sean and Gus are, and they are diving right in, and they meet the lead writer. And this guy, his name is Lance Rothstein, and he's played by Saul Rubinek. I know him mainly as Artie from Warehouse 13. I love that show, and his character on that show is awesome.
He also had a really good role on Frasier,
I
which you
don't like
won't
that
like,
show,
but I
so
know.
mhm,
That's what I just
yeah,
said. I said you won't like it,
it's too
but he had
dry.
a good role in there. I liked at this particular moment when they meet him and we get a nickname.
Mhm.
Sean introduces himself as Sean Spencer, and this is Lavender Gooms.
Mhm.
This is one of the better ones. I love some lavender gooms.
This scene also, like, initiates that spark in Sean, and he says he's like, you're not an actor? Are you sure? You kinda got, like, an actor vibe." Like,
Mhm.
yeah, he sets the scene for that.
A little bit of
And they
foreshadowing.
find out that essentially George basically lives in his dressing room since he's been with the show for 8 years and his wife left him. He's is just there. That's his house,
Matt,
essentially.
Matt, can you repeat after me? Jorge.
George.
Jorge.
George.
Wow. You and Sean, 2 little peas in a pod. Can you please
Yeah.
stay being a psychic detective so that we can go do some cases and earn some money?
I've thought about it, but
I
it's
mean,
not
they
there
don't
yet.
have to know what we know.
Mhm.
Just saying. So at 9 minutes 5 seconds, we're at the police station, and Lassie is so fun. Like, I love this scene because he tells Jules, he's like, I'm sensing a hair.
Oh, he mocks him, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, it just irks me. Like, he's
Mhm.
very, very open about like this guy just is like, he's really making me mad. I like
Uh,
that scene.
this scene also introduces Juliet's little subplot here.
Mm.
There's a new her and Lester are walking through the station and they notice a new like transfer, a new cop. And Juliet's
Happens to be a
interesting because it's a
female.
lady cop and she's like, there's not enough women around here anyways. I'm happy. I'm happy we got new people. And she goes over and tries to introduce and make like a good first impression. And the lady cop is rude to her. And I don't know. I got the vibe from the way it was portrayed that she just doesn't want to be like acknowledged and treated specially. She kind of just wants to blend in.
Mhm.
And
Jules
I kind
didn't
of got
get
that.
that.
Yeah,
Jules
no,
didn't.
Jules is not
She
aware at all this episode.
Yeah, she was not picking up what she was putting down. It
Hmm.
wasn't happening.
I'm also
Um,
curious though if because she was kind of rude, like she was rude.
she
Um,
was.
I'm curious if an officer would actually talk like that to a detective. I don't know too much about it, more than what TV kind of says, but detectives like you have to earn your way up. Like that's a rank
Mhm.
change from officer to detective, and I'm curious if there's any
I
rules
would
about that.
think though that, as a female, I would think that she certainly was probably trying to make herself heard, sort of, in such a way where she's like she was just trying to make sure Juliet understood she
I
was
don't know.
not
It was aggressive.
I don't know.
It wasn't just like stern. Like it was
Mm,
the what she was saying was also like rude and aggressive.
yeah.
So,
Well, alright, so that's our B storyline.
mhm.
Back to the A storyline, Sean and Gus go to question Jorge in his dressing room, and we're at 10 minutes 26 seconds, and we have our pineapple sighting. There is a pineapple on the coffee table in his dressing room.
I completely missed that.
Wow!
I have a pineapple sighting later on.
If you're talking about the
Verbal.
recipe, yeah. No, this is an actual pineapple you can see. You
Wow.
missed the whole top of the pineapple.
I missed it.
It
Yeah.
was right next to the box when he set the box down on the it was right there.
Mhm. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I don't know how I missed that. George introduces himself as Jorge, and Sean immediately starts to giggle, and he's like, "Jorge, that's a little silly, don't you think?" And Gus and Jorge are just like staring at him, and he's like, "Okay." He still doesn't call him Jorge though. He tells George that he believes he's innocent, and that completely changes his attitude, and he starts answering their questions. Gus
Mhm.
immediately starts asking him questions about the show, though, instead of questions about the case.
Mhm. Of course.
Hmm.
It's the only reason he's there.
They also notice, and this is not just a weird little, I guess, quote from the show, but it does actually come into play later on, that he has like some like meatballs in a takeout container, like in his trash can, that were uneaten. And usually I hunger for meatballs the way a jackal salivates for an injured possum. But sadly, I have no appetite for them now.
At this point, Sean also notices kind of a clue. He sees like a crack in one of the frames in the dressing room and a crack on the wall, and learns that Contessa is a little bit volatile. She's the actress that plays Corinne on the show.
And then they find out that she's very volatile as they hear her like throwing Vasion at Lance, the head writer for the
Mhm.
show. As Contessa leaves her room and like storms off, angry at Lance, Sean can see into her room, and he sees a pair of underwear that look like the same type that the victim was wearing. So he's kind of got a connection there now that he needs
Yeah,
to
he knew
follow up.
something was happening.
And as they walk past to kind of follow Contessa out, I thought it was kind of funny. Lance, the writer, he's like, "I'm just gonna go to the writer's room where it is emotionally damaging but physically safe." It felt like such a real line. I love this guy. I love this actor. He does this such a good job. He's so convincing in this role. I love it.
Mhm.
Because he even says like, for someone of my weak constitution, I can't really handle this like level of questioning. Like he's just this like he knows what he is and he just is like, accepting of it. And I love it. I
Right.
loved it. Especially later. Later
Yeah.
on, he vibes really well with Sean and Gus, and I would love it's another one of
With the
those
hands on the
actors that I
glass.
would love. Yes, exactly, and when they're talking through the phone in the prison,
Yeah.
he's like and Sean and Gus are sharing one phone.
Uh-huh.
I love it. He takes their silliness and kind of is serious with it, and then is also silly too, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay, we also noticed after the fight, with the writer, with Contessa, Sean and Gus are gonna go after her, and Sean says, "I'll charm her, and I want you to grab a piece of her hair."
Yeah, so
He's
Gus is,
like
like,
he wants
trolling like a
Gus
creep behind her
he wants Gus to like, rip a hair out of her head.
while
And
he's
Gus is like,
distracting
"How
her.
am I supposed to do that one?" It's funny.
He ultimately does fail in getting the hair, but
Yeah.
Sean does, through questioning, find out that she was sleeping with the victim.
At 15 minutes, we're now back on the set of the soap opera, and Sean is trying to talk to the writer. They're talking about how bad the acting is being done by this extra who's playing a delivery man. This is kind of leading somewhere.
He's doing weird flirting, like, he's supposed to be
Yeah,
flirting, and he's doing this weird
because
eye
the
nostril thing.
eyebrows are just it's a lot.
He's moving, like, his whole forehead, like, it's
Yeah.
really weird. And, like, Sean is criticizing him and telling the director, "It's like, it's all in the eyes, it's not it doesn't start there, though, it comes around, it ends there."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's when we know something's gonna happen.
It's like, how would you do the scene?" And then he reaches out and, like, unbuttons a couple of his shirt buttons. It again, like, it was so perfect. There was
Yeah.
2 people in this episode in particular that I thought were like, "Are they even acting, or is this just, like, their job?" The
Uh-huh.
props guy that we're about to talk about
Yes.
and Lance. The
Yes.
both of them seem like this is literally their job, and they're just like, "Hey, we need a
Mhm.
props guy. Can we just put a camera in there and get a conversation with you real quick?"
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
um,
was like they weren't even acting. That was
exactly.
really yeah, very good. It was very good.
Just a minute later, Gus is at the prop master who tells them that George would not have known the knife was even fake unless he looked really closely at it. They make the props as close to real as possible, not only so that it looks real on camera, but also so that the actor has like this real feel in their hands, and it makes it a little more convincing for them too.
Yeah, like, they don't wanna be holding something that's made of, like, styrofoam and it's all light, it's not gonna be real, they gotta have weight
Exactly.
to it and everything else.
Although still would have checked to make sure that the
Of
blade wasn't
course.
sharp or that the blade like retracted. Like I would just play with it with my hands real quick and make sure that it is what it is. I
Of
think it's
course.
nonsense that this. Yeah, sorry, not to get off topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely thought this guy was a real prop master, and I'm referencing this from this. I follow a prop master on YouTube. It looks just like that too. Like that looked like it was an actual prop trailer where it's just stuff all over the walls. Like if you look behind him in the scene, there's like 100 umbrellas shoved behind a shelf. There's a whole rack of like briefcases and attaches. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I well, I think they probably were using something real.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I could see it. It definitely seems
Yeah.
like it would be honestly the easy answer to this
Mhm.
instead of building a set. Just use a real one.
Yeah, Gus also learned from him that about 6 people had access to that knife that day. It wasn't, like, just the one person.
So it should only be like 2 points of like passing off. So
I don't know.
6 is sketchy.
A lot. Yeah.
And they even mentioned later on that they set it on a table, like a prop table, where
Mhm.
it could be tampered with, obviously. But yeah, I thought it was weird. Although I have lots of issues with this episode because there's one
Of
more at the
course.
end too that I have as well.
Okay.
Gus also mentions that they're running out of time because they are kind of running out of clues, and with their last thing being that 6 people could have touched this thing before it got to the actual actor, they're running out of time and they need to find a way to keep investigating. Sean mentions that he found a way to stay on set, and then he tells Gus to get out of his eye line, and Gus looks around and
Yes.
realizes that everybody is like waiting for him to move, and all the cameras are pointed at them. And then he notices that Sean is wearing a costume, a delivery guy
So,
named
okay,
Chad.
can I every single time I watch this episode, I am so happy when we get to this moment. I can't I almost can't talk about it because it was hard for me to even stop and make notes watching this because he's so funny in this role. Everything from, okay, we've got the very fluffy, full hair, the eyeliner or mascara. He's got something on his eyes. The
Hmm.
Spanish accent, the shorts when they cut away a little bit and you see the shorts. There is so much happening here that is so funny.
I put that he looks like Crocodile Dundee with the shorts.
Well, the Crocodile Dundee, he had shorter shorts.
Yeah.
This is more like Steve Irwin,
Hmm.
Crocodile Hunter. So funny, just so funny.
And we can't skip over the quick jump over to Lassie and Jules, who are also investigating this case, but there's just less prominent in this episode.
Yes.
Lassiter is interrogating one of the other actresses on there, and he comes to the conclusion that these writers are all just sitting in a room, like thinking of interesting and creative ways to kill people. And his direction turns towards them,
Mhm.
and he ultimately ends up like taking all their scripts and starts like binging them to try and see if he can figure out if he can get anything from it. It should also be mentioned that we do get a little bit of McNabb in this scene. He and Juliet are both fans of the show, and whenever they start going over details of the show, they both kind of like fanboy, fangirl over like knowing what they're talking about, what the actress is talking about. So everybody's watching the show apparently, just not saying it.
Right. Everybody got sucked in like Gus did into the
Henry, Gus, the
telenovela.
chief,
What did he
mhm,
say at the one point? He's like, "The telenovela is
a craze.
a craze."
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
So in the scene where we do get to see for the first time Sean in his persona, or as Chad, he mentions to Gus because like he says that he's getting away with Spanish that he learned from Charo on Love Boat. Gus
Charo.
also tells him that he lacks passion in his scenes, and Lassie finds out that Sean is now an actor and is annoyed. Like he comes in trying to kick him off the set, and then the assistant gives him a coffee, like gives Sean a coffee, and he's like, he's supposed to be here." Yeah, this happens to Lassiter twice, and he gets annoyed every time. It kind of like knocks his authority. We also have in this scene, Kelly, the craft services girl, brings Sean another little box of the pineapple pecan dumplings, and she's
Mhm.
like, "I
That's
made these
our
just for you,
seconds.
Chad." And this is something that you like kind of would skip over now, but towards the end, you'll
Yeah.
recognize that she called him Chad, not Sean.
She
So
calls
she's like
everyone by their
into the
proper
show.
name.
And also the takeout box is the same one that was the meat that had the meatballs in it in George's like trash can in his office
Mhm.
or in his like green room.
Well, and just simply the fact that she's brought something special to him.
Yes.
At about 21 minutes in it, I loved how irritated Lassie was when he saw that Sean was on the show. When he looked over
Hmm.
and saw the chair with Sean Spencer written on it, he's like, "No, no, no, no." It was I think that was great. He was really upset about it. We cut then to Henry's house where he's ready to watch his soap. And all at once on the screen appears Sean. It
Yeah,
was
he doesn't even say anything. I think he says like,
He goes,
"What
"What the
the?"
hell?"
and then he like starts to lean in, and then the rest of the scene, it's just him like staring at the screen, like trying to make sense of what's happening.
Like, how is Sean on the show? I think he put it together, I'm sure, right away that, someone had just died on the show.
Mhm.
And, Sean's there to solve the case. But I mean, his face, it was great.
Yeah. Next, we follow Lassie and Jules, who are at the hospital. George apparently tried to kill himself and left a note taking responsibility for the murder. When they get to his room, they find Sean and Gus at his bedside while he's unconscious.
Lassie's happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Lassie is thrilled to see Sean ahead of them at his bedside. Sean
Mhm.
Sean and Gus are both listed on his friends and family list. So Lassie and Jules are annoyed because again, Lassie tries to get him kicked out by one of the nurses, and she's like, "These two are the only ones who are actually supposed to be in here. You guys need to
Yeah.
leave."
I was gonna say, I like how Juliet is like, "How does he make friends so quickly?"
And Sean
She's
knows the details too. He's
Yeah.
like, "George is from Mexico, and he's like here working, sending money back to his family and his big brother."
Yeah.
Sean's
Yeah.
like, "Little
Uh
sister."
In this scene, we also get another clue about the case because Sean sees a synthetic hair on George or Jorge. It's right along his hair.
You said George.
He notices it, and I noticed in this scene, all Sean is doing is like soap opera acting.
Yeah.
It literally reminded me of the episode of Friends where Joey is teaching soap opera acting. And he's telling them there's, like, the fish hook in the eyebrow, and you raise your eyebrow up high and, like, all these different things and, like, pull your hair out to cry and that kinda stuff. Because every face that he makes in here is just it's so soap opera. Soap opera, it's so good.
Mhm. But Sean does, or Gus does say something interesting in this. But Gus does say something interesting in this scene as he's kind of just observing everything, and
Mhm.
he says that like with all the twists and turns in this is starting to seem like a real life soap opera, which gets
Yes.
Sean kind of thinking. And he also notices whenever he's like looking at George that there's a hair, like a brown hair on his head,
That's the
kind of like
synthetic
blended
hair I
into
was
his hair
talking
that's not
about.
his.
Yeah.
Yeah. So uh they have something new to go on. Well,
Yep.
not really something new, they just have more to go on, and they know that George definitely didn't try to kill himself.
At 25 minutes, we're at the station with Lassie and Jules, and they have been going through all these scripts. Juliet starts to read the suicide note again that supposedly was left by Jorge, and Lassie recognizes it, and he's like, "I have heard that somewhere," and realizes that it was in one of the scripts earlier in the show.
Mhm.
It was not a real suicide note,
Yeah, it was
and
copied
now
verbatim,
right, it was copied verbatim, and now Lassie is on a mission to arrest Lance Rothstein, the writer.
oh, well, he does. He
Yeah, well,
does
yeah,
arrest him,
he's
yeah.
like but
Lance is in
he's on a
jail now.
mission, like, he was like, "Okay, let's go."
Mhm.
Yeah.
But Sean and him do have a moment, before he gets taken away, because Sean and him are talking on the set, and they have,
You're
like,
talking
this
about
jail set.
Sean and the writer.
Yes,
Yeah.
Lance. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're on this, like, jail set where they're, like, talking through the phones, and they have, like, the glass separating them. And, like, before he leaves as he gets taken away, Sean's like, "Oh, I can get you off on that murder." And then Lassie tells him also the one for George, and he's like, "Ugh, I don't know about that." And then they kinda, like, touch hands through the glass before he gets taken away.
It was excellent.
It was so great. See,
It's like this little
he
bit of
rolls.
emotion.
Yeah, he rolls with the silliness with Sean's character, I love it.
He totally believes Sean, everything that he
Mhm.
does. He's like, "You." First, he's told him, "You gotta act. You gotta do this. Let's check out your chest." Like, the whole
God, whenever
thing.
he pops open his shirt, he's like, "How would you do it?"
How would you do the scene?
Yeah,
Yeah. It
it
was
was so
great.
good.
And we go back to poor Jules, 26 minutes, 30 seconds, and Jules is trying yet again to befriend this new female cop. She even takes her a cupcake.
Which is super
Dur
weird.
During this exchange, she says to her, "I saw you eating one of these the other day. It's red velvet, just like that one was." And, she lays out all these things like she's noticed about this girl, and it's kind of, like, a little much, but I now okay, so I do think that that girl's response is a little much too. Like, filing a complaint, why wouldn't she just say to her, like, "Hey,
Well,
I don't wanna
she
be friends with you."
she could be worried she has a stalker. I mean, we've seen you. See where this can go.
What?
I mean, she's like, "I've been watching you. I saw that you like cupcakes. I went to the store on my break to buy you one." I mean, maybe she's had a run-in with some stalkers before. I mean, she's a cop. She's maybe seen how bad it can
Maybe.
get. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was completely uncalled for. We know Juliet, so we have a different
Right.
perspective.
Right, but she
But
doesn't, so I
yeah,
get
it's
it.
quite shocking to Juliet, though. Yeah.
Yeah, well, needless to say, this other female cop is just not taking all this well.
Hmm.
Next we have Henry showing up to the set where Sean has had his makeup done. He's still loving craft services. He says it's craft services is the leaving Las Vegas of food
Hmm.
or yeah, something like that. Anyway, he's Henry actually tells him he's kind of embarrassed, but then he's surprised that Sean already has all these fans. Like, how do you have fans already? Which leads them to start talking about the motive for the murder. And Henry points out that, a lot of people don't know how to separate this show between, from real life. And
Well, he points that
that,
out by
yeah,
confusing Chad and Sean,
right,
and
right,
he's
right,
like,
right.
It makes you look so bad. Why did you have to cheat on Katarine, or Karine?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "It's me, Dad, Shawnee. Look at me, Papa. It's me."
Well, from there, Sean realizes, hey, maybe this is not one of the actors. Maybe this was a fan that committed this murder or replaced the knife or what have you. So,
29 minutes in, the guys are at the jail talking with Lance, who mentions that he loves being in jail because he literally, like, all he can do is focus on writing here. Sean tells him that he thinks that the murderer is a fan and not an actor. The suspect is doing these things to protect Corinne or Quintessa's character because they can't tell the difference between them and they're kind of obsessed with the characters in the show.
hmm
Sean tells him that he has a plan and he wants Lance to write Chad into a situation where he is hurting Corinne,
hmm
and he's hoping that that'll work as kind of bait to get the person to try and modify something on set or try to attack him.
yeah, he also tells them, I'm not sure if it was exactly this same time, but I do believe it was the same time that they were there talking to him, that they need a script tonight because the show's going to have to be done live.
Right, because they're falling behind with all these, like, people getting
Right.
arrested and scripts being taken, that kind of thing.
Right. Now, we also have a scene here where the chief is watching the show in her office, and Jules comes in, and we find out this the other female officer has filed harassment charges against Jules. And Jules tells the chief she's just was trying to make a friend. And this is like, oh, this is so sad. The chief basically tells her that the two of them are not friends. And you can just see poor little Jules. She is hurt.
She's crushed.
She's not
Yeah.
she's not happy
Yeah,
about
she
it.
went from having, only 1 friend
Mhm.
to 0 friends.
Right.
Yeah.
So 34 minutes in, we're back at the set of the soap opera, ready to go live. They start the scene, and
Well, he starts improving. He's not
Sean
reading the
tells,
script.
wait for, she's in this, she's in this very, like poofy,
Orange dress.
taffeta orange dress, and he tells her in Spanish that she looks like a nectarine wrapped in taffeta.
I don't know
And
what
then
taffeta is, but
wait, and then she keeps coming down the stairs and they talk about how they've gotta go, and he starts walking up the stairs. Did you notice how he was standing on the
I took a
stairs?
screenshot of it. I was gonna use it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he essentially has 1 foot, and then he goes up, like, 4 stairs and puts his other foot up there, and it looks like he's doing, like, a lunge or something. Yeah, it's nonsense, and his face with between the makeup and his reactions of, like, bringing, like, his lip up or something, he
And the
looks
hair
absurd. Yeah, and he
and
keeps
the hair.
moving his head around a lot when he talks.
And so visually to me, this episode is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this episode is fantastic. There's so many things that we couldn't actually talk about
I
because we'd
can't.
literally just be
Ugh,
talking about individual sentences. Like,
I
there's so
know.
many funny
It's
jokes. There's,
hard.
like, facial expressions from Sean and his
Oh.
persona as Chad. This episode really is awesome.
It's
And
just
if you don't
filled with
remember it,
them.
you need to go back and rewatch it.
It's just filled with them. I can't
Mhm.
even take it. It really makes me
So
like every minute of the show there's something funny happening. It's great.
mhm. But, we're
So
about
Matt,
37 minutes in now,
yeah, wrap
and
it up for us, Matt. Wrap it up.
Sean has been sent off screen by Karine, sorry, and we're about 37 minutes in now, and Sean's character Chad has been sent off screen by Karine, and he's going to get a nail gun because she needs to fix something before they go to the ball. And this is the setup that Lance has put in to get, Karine to try and like kill Chad.
Which is wait, can I add this is funny in and of itself because they're like in an evening gown and he's getting ready to go change and she wants
Hmm.
him to fix a broken shelf before they go.
Yeah, it's
This is
nonsense.
that in and of itself funny. Okay.
And so Sean jumps off and offset, and he goes to change. And while he's changing, he yells over to Gus. He's like, "Have you been watching the props table? Like, did somebody tamper with the gun, with the nail gun?" And he's like, "What? I've been watching the show." And he's like, "You didn't tell me to watch the props table." So now Sean's about to go on set, and he doesn't know what's about to happen. Here is my problem, my final quip about this situation with the whole prop gun thing. The assistant hands Sean the prop gun or the nail gun while they're offset. Sean can literally test it himself to see if it's real, or just remove the magazine of nails.
But what
This
if
is
he
not a
doesn't
problem.
know how one of those work?
Sean doesn't know how a nail gun functions.
Listen, maybe he's wrapped up in like, "Oh my gosh, I have to go be on air soon." Like,
Nope.
I get
Nope.
it. I get it should be
Nope.
tested, but it just wasn't.
It
So, it's
was
okay.
a flaw,
Mhm.
and it should
But
have
they
been
needed
given
it
to
for the
Kareem.
storyline.
It should have started in Kareem's hands. That way Sean couldn't have tested it. It bothered me.
Okay. Alright, I hear you.
Sean comes back into scene, and he has it, and he gives her the nail gun, and this is where a lot of these subtle jokes come into play
Oh
that
my
you really
gosh,
have to
right?
watch because it's like every line he's like improvising. At one point, he's like really stressed about this nail gun situation, and he starts just saying like "EO" at the end of all of his things.
When he
Like,
says, "I'm not a murderer."
yeah, or it's like it's super dangerousosa. Like he starts like talking with a Spanish accent, thinking he's speaking Spanish. It's really
Right.
funny. It's like these really subtle little like line after line after line jokes.
Mhm.
What ultimately ends up happening though is he notices that the sandwich girl, still can't remember. Oh, craft
Craft
services girl
services. Mhm.
is has marks on her like hairline from where a wig would have attached, and it
Mhm.
kind of just all pops into place now that she is like a super fan of the show. She's obsessed, specifically with Kareen. Is essentially anybody on the show that wrongs her, she has like started hurting.
And she has an easy way to by giving it to them in their food.
Right. She poisoned the meatballs for George. She switched out the prop knife that was killed. I can't remember his name.
Ronaldo.
Yes,
Yes.
Ronaldo Gamalobo. She
Mhm.
swapped out the knife so that George would kill him, then poisoned George, and now she swapped out the nail gun with a real nail gun, the prop nail gun with a real one. She then kind of, because she's bonkers, just comes out and admits it, and she's like, "I'm in love with her. Like, I'll do anything for her." And then she tries to attack Sean again, and that's when Lassie and
Mhm.
Jules like step up and grab her.
When Lasseter realizes that he is on camera and he goes, "Hola."
Muchos.
Me gusto queso. I like cheese. And Jules is like, "That was an odd thing to say."
Well, Jules speaks fluent Spanish because she's from Miami.
Oh my gosh.
Lassie does not.
No, that's so funny. He said, "Me gusta el queso." I like flipped it to Spanish there and went, "Hola." Like he was kind of into it. It was
Yeah,
sort
and
of out
his
of
he got like
character for
nervous too.
Lassie.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was like out of character for him. He was having fun with it. Hola.
Well,
Me
Lassie has some of
llamo.
that camera like stage fright kind of thing.
Was great.
Mhm.
hmm Yeah, and then we end this episode with Sean, Gus, and Henry on the couch watching the soap opera, and you see that they've like dumped Chad into a well and thought he was dead, and then it ends with him coming up at the top of it. And now I personally wish that they had revisited this later in the show in later seasons because Chad did not really die. I really believe that they should have revisited this sort of theme. I think
Yeah,
it was
after they dump his body,
great.
he like swims up to the top and kind of like
Yes.
pushes his head out of the water. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it could have
Like
been an
I'm
interesting
not
thing to come
dead.
back to.
Yeah, it would have been great. Okay. Tell me,
Or
Matthew.
or a fun way to do it without him going to do it would be if somebody recognized him, like, "Hey, aren't you Chad from the explosion of Romantic?" Like, that would have
Right.
been great if like a fan of the show saw him.
Uh-huh.
Just some random episode. That'd be
They
great.
needed to bring this back. I mean, they really did.
Mhm.
I'm gonna start with my thoughts about this episode because I can't take it. I cannot take it. I give this episode 5 pineapples.
Okay.
This episode is hysterical to me. This is never an episode I'm not going to watch if it's on. I will turn it on just because of how funny it is, and it's like a go-to episode. This is in my top 5. Love, love, love it. It's funny from start to finish. There are so many good references in it. Sean's accent, his hair, the makeup, just every single thing about this was on point for me. I love it.
I am not surprised, but, I would have to agree.
Wait a minute. We
There's
agree
so much to
again.
this. Yep, I'm gonna give it 5 pineapples as well.
Okay.
It's not my favorite as much as it is yours. There are a couple things that throw me off that almost knocked it into 4 for me,
Really?
specifically with
Okay.
the whole if the main plot has, like, big holes in it, I it kind of throws me sometimes. So with this one, I'm giving it a pass on the plot part with like him having the nail gun at the end because there's so much other comedy here. There's so many different tiers of comedy too. So I'm gonna give it a pass, but 5 pineapples for me.
I want to ask you a question though about your reasoning. If what just happened with Alec Baldwin on the set of Rust hadn't happened, would you still be looking at it like that?
100%.
Really?
Especially,
Okay.
I might not have said as much about the first two, but the last one, like they handed him the gun. He had nothing to be afraid of. He could have unloaded it. He could have like told them like this is real and got it switched out. Like all he had to do was test it or even just look at it and be like, "Oh, that's actual nails in there." Okay. Take
Okay.
out the battery pack.
All right.
It's a plot hole for me.
Okay. No, I get that. I just wanted to know if it was because there's been so much in the news about this
No, no.
that
I mean
maybe it like highlighted it for you.
that calls to like I pointed out like it seems like obvious logic and
Okay.
like but specifically with that last one, that's the big one. Cuz
Okay.
any danger that they were in could have easily been avoided just by Sean, using his brain.
Okay.
But I digress. I still give it 5 pineapples, and it was a great episode. There's multiple different tiers of humor. We did get a little bit of every single person, and
And they worked
it's great.
together, sort of. Yeah. I mean, like they had all had scenes together.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk about our notable points, Matt. Let's see. Did you have a come on son moment? Mine was when the chief pretty much tells Jules that they're not friends.
Ooh, 100%.
That's yeah,
Yep.
that's
It puts a
come on
bad
son.
it puts a bad like feeling in your gut whenever she does that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll definitely agree with you on that one.
Wait for it. For me was when the writer opened up Sean's shirt and was kind of like, "How would you do it?" Because then it's like,
hmm
"Oh, wait for it, wait for it."
I even though I gave this one 5 pineapples, I don't really have a wait for it for this one.
Okay.
I guess maybe to see how like crazy it gets with the whole Chad thing, but I don't really
Mhm.
think that counts as one. I don't really have a standard weight for it this time.
Okay. My "aw, yeah" moment was just Sean as Chad.
I think this one, yeah, yeah. I think if I had to narrow it down to a Chad moment specifically, it's definitely when he was on the stairs. In his yeah, like on the stairs in
His
that
stance.
last final scene, his stance, the way that he shakes his head around, I'm like, oh yeah, that he's on point. That's hilarious. That's
That's
amazing.
right.
hmm
What about a Henry lesson?
Like I could totally see Steve Franks like behind the camera, like dying laughing at what like at what James Roday is giving him.
Don't you wonder how they stayed in character? Like, how were they not all just cracking up at this?
Yeah, it's definitely a hard one.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I would have been laughing so hard they'd have had to take me out of there.
Yeah, so I could definitely see that, especially after hearing Steve Franks on the Psychologist are in podcast and the way that he
Mhm.
was talking about some of those things. I could 100% see it now.
Yeah.
He's like, do some ridiculous stuff on the stairs as you're reading the lines.
Okay. All right. Do we have a Henry do we have a Henry lesson?
I think we kind of got one, but not really. I didn't actually notate any. I didn't really get like a solid one.
So I notated that motive is key. Like,
Sure.
if they don't have a motive, they're not gonna figure out who it is, so really figure out what the motive was.
It doesn't have as much wisdom as some of them others do, but he
No,
did
but
say it.
But he needed to be reminded of it in this
Yeah.
case because he's like, "We don't even have a motive," and he's like, "Well, motive is the thing.
hmm
You've gotta have a motive." So, I really kinda feel like that was it this time.
Okay.
Mm.
We had our pineapple, 2. We had the verbal pineapple of the pineapple pecan dumplings, which we do see Gus eat, but it also doesn't look visually like a pineapple.
No.
And the one that you saw on the table.
Yes, in the
Uh,
dressing room,
we
in
had our
Jorge's
silly
dressing room.
nickname for Gus, which was Lavender Gooms at 8 minutes 4 seconds.
I love this one. I love this one. This one is right up there with Ovaltine Jenkins for me.
Mhm.
It's a good
Barb,
one.
what do we got for
What?
pop culture?
All right, pop culture references. CHIPS, which is the abbreviation for California Highway Patrol. This show was a 1-hour cop show that ran from 1977 to 1983, starred Eric Estrada. This is not the first mention of this on the show. We've talked about it before.
Mhm,
Dame Judi Dench is a British actress best known for her role as M in the Bond films and many, many others. She has 135 credits. She's all over everything, Oscar winner, really great actress. Telenovela translates to be a Spanish soap opera. We also have a Pudding Pops reference. Dude, Pudding Pops were so good. This was a frozen treat made by Jello. It was very popular in the 80s. Bill Cosby did the commercials for them. They were amazing. They would come in like vanilla or chocolate or a swirl. It was pretty
mhm,
exciting. When you were a kid and you knew pudding pops were in the freezer, you were happy. Ted Nugent is referenced in this episode. He is a rock star guitar player. He's been part of Amboy Dukes, Damn Yankees, which is my favorite, and a band called Damocracy. Blossom is referenced twice in this episode. Blossom was a sitcom starring Mayim Bialik and Joey Lawrence that ran from 1990 to 1995 about a teenage girl. BJ and the Bear is another TV reference in this episode. That show ran from 1978 to 1981, and it was about a trucker and his pet chimpanzee going across the country. Sounds like something you'd want to watch, wouldn't it be, Matt? I mean, a trucker and his chimpanzee sounds,
maybe
you
in
know.
like 98. Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, it starred Greg Evigan. Keith Hernandez was mentioned in this episode. He was a former baseball player for the Mets and the Cardinals. Leaving Las Vegas was an Oscar-winning movie from the year 1995. It starred Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue, and essentially his character, Nick Cage's character, goes to Las Vegas to drink himself to death. That's like the goal of the movie. Danielle Steele was referenced. She was a romance novel writer. Or I believe she still is. I'm I've never read any of her books, but anyway, she's got a bunch of them. They also mentioned Roth, Hemingway, and Steinbeck, who are all famous writers. Ethan Hawke is mentioned. He's an actor. Started working in 1985. He was in Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, which was a great movie. A lot of people were in that one. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and, all those guys started in that movie. Gattaca was another one of his films, which was kind of cool. If you've never seen that one, Matt, you'd love that. Great Expectations, and he was also in Training Day with Denzel Washington. Judy Bloom was referenced. She's a young adult writer. She wrote Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, Deanie, and several other books. The Love Boat is a reference. That was an Aaron Spelling produced show that ran from 1977 to 1987. It was an hour-long show that had different guest stars each week that fall in love on this cruise ship. I used to love that show, I'm just saying. And then the last reference that I had was Charo. She was a Spanish-American actress and comedian. She guest starred on The Love Boat many, many times. I can remember seeing Charo on like every talk show in the 80s, everything. She was like all the rage in the 80s. So that's all I've got. Did I miss any? Did you catch any, Matt?
No, I only put a couple on, but you got them all right away.
Okay.
So, yep.
Very cool. So
And
that.
hold up over time. I think it holds up
Ooh.
pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
There was nothing about this episode that I thought couldn't still just kill it,
Yeah.
Only
So
I do suspect that moving forward, it might not be as funny to have prop incidents in shows after what has just happened. I think that wraps up this episode. On our next episode, we are going to discuss season 2, episode 14, called Dislodged.
I'm looking forward to that one. I remember it. I haven't seen it in a long time though, so I hope
Yeah.
I remember it as good. I hope it's as good as I think it is by the name. It reminded me, I like the name, but we'll see.
I hope it's better than I remember it.
Okay. Well, don't forget to check out our Facebook group and our subreddit. Again, all the links are in the description box below.
All right, everybody. I guess that wraps up this episode. On the next episode, we will be discussing season 2, episode 14, called Dislodged.
I think I remember that one, and I think it was a good one. I just don't remember it that well. I don't know. Maybe that means it's a bad one.
I'm hoping it's better than what I remember.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Don't
Yeah.
forget to check out our Facebook group as well as the subreddit. The links are down below if you want to take part in the conversation and just keep up with all the psych stuff out there. Don't forget, we are now on YouTube. We have the entire first and second season on there, as well as our review of Psych 3. This is Gus. So go and check that out. We hope you guys enjoy it. We hope you guys also liked the movie.
Yeah, and also in the subreddit and the Facebook group, you'll see Matthew put some fun questions up every week.
Yeah, I
So,
do some psych
yeah.
trivia occasionally. It's not on a standard release date though, so just check
Yeah,
in
just
occasionally.
check
Follow us
them
on there.
out. You might find some trivia that you're good at. In the meantime, you can also email us any questions, theories, anything like that. We'd love your emails. Our email address is thepsychpodcast@gmail.com. And we hope you guys have a great week.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.